Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. And this episode is an interesting one because this is our Patreon Vote Winner episode. Every month our patrons over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv at the $5 tier and up vote out of 4 movies, and we do the winner. That's how it works. The theme for this month was movies that were in previous votes throughout 2018 and got a second chance, and we picked 4 that we thought, these would be 4 good ones to talk about, and Wings of Desire was the one that won. So here we are. And this is a German film, which is mostly in German, although there's a bit of English, a little bit of French here or there, but you're getting subtitles for a lot of it, so brace yourself. It is directed by Wim Wenders. We will start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers, and there we go. It is a film about angels. 2 main characters are angels who are in Berlin. It is the 1980s. It is soon before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it is about an angel who basically decides and learns that he wants to become human. He is feeling alienated from the world, and he wants to experience it as a human being. And the film's about that choice, his choice, the journey to that choice, and the outcome of that choice.
Yeah, and I would say that is, in terms of the plot,
That's everything.
that's everything.
There's a lot of details, of course, which I'm not going to spoil, but yeah.
Of course, but there is almost no plot. It's just a character arc.
Yes, no, that's true. It's a very meditative film. There's a lot of slow moving. There's a lot of just sitting on a moment. There's a lot of poetry in the dialogue. There's a lot of just sort of atmospheric shots with music playing.
Yeah.
Some of the most beautiful stuff in the film is right at the start, where it's the aerial shots, and you see the city, and it's looking down, and it's just this music's playing, and it's in black and white. There's a technique in the film where, or monochrome more accurately, it's actually slightly blue tinted, but it's a monochrome technique where, whenever it's the angels, it's monochrome, which is a lot of the first 2/3 of the movie.
It's the majority of the movie overall still.
Yeah. But there's a good chunk at the end that's in colour, but there's like 1 or 2 brief moments sprinkled throughout that do switch to colour. And basically that's when we're in the human being's perspective, because they can't see the angels.
Yeah.
But when we're with the angels, which is a lot of the film, it's in monochrome. So that gives it this otherworldly kind of feel to it. And it's actually also kind of a plot device in a way, because we actually find out that the angels themselves can't see colour in the film. They don't understand. They can't comprehend the different colours. This is how they see the world. So it's actually used as a sort of plot device, as well as just being a symbolic thing for us to differentiate between when they're there and when they're not, or at least when we're from their perspective and when we're not.
Yes.
So that's the gist. But I'd seen this before. I'd seen this a few years ago. Well, I'll say a few years ago, probably about 8 years ago now.
Time's a bitch.
Yes, you had not. You had not seen
I had
this.
not, no. It had been something that had been on my radar for a while, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll ask the question: did you enjoy Wings of Desire?
I did, yeah. It's pretty great.
There you go. Done. Okay. Thanks for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. My job's done. That's all I'm here for, right? Show up, say it's good or it's bad, and then you can do the rest, and I'll go to sleep.
What did you like about it? Care to elaborate?
I could elaborate, but I figured that was the discussion. No, what I liked performances, the music, cinematography especially is pretty great. The fact that there is no plot in lesser hands could become just a self-indulgent mess, but it never is. It always feels very focused.
Yeah, because it's one of those films where you're watching it, and it's very clear that everything represents something else. And there's a lot of themes in this film that we've not even touched upon yet. Obviously, humanity and human beings, and the nature of choice, the nature of duality. The setting is important. The fact that it is in Berlin right before the fall of the Berlin Wall is also important. It kind of uses that as its own themes. Arguably, the film's really about that, more than it is about humanity. But the idea that talking about humanity is talking about what's going on in Berlin, and talking about how people are split in half, and how and so on. Like it hits upon these things, and but it's actually a relatively optimistic film. But it doesn't shy away from darker elements of humanity, though.
Definitely
by
not.
any stretch. It definitely gives you examples of the worst, and still comes out on in the end in a fairly optimistic viewpoint, which I think is perhaps almost the intention of the film in a weird way. Like if that was the idea at the time, because you're in Berlin, you're in Germany at this time period, and you're hoping that Germany will be united and be a singular entity once more. Hopefully soon, and it turned out it was soon. This is 1987. This was made.
Yeah, that's what it's interesting how timeless it feels. Obviously, I know when it was made, and it's relevant to that given the Berlin.
It almost feels like it was made in hindsight.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It feels like either it was made a lot later, or also it feels like it could have everything about it feels like it could have been made decades earlier. Weirdly, in the way
sure,
that
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's funny because I like this. This obviously was very relevant when it came out. At least as relevant as art house films can be, because obviously it's not a mainstream, populist come and watch the explosions movie. It's not that at all. That would disappoint many average movie going person, but it was super relevant at the time to the point where, I guess it's just the idea that the world was on the brink of this change, and you could kind of sense that everyone was thinking about it, and that's maybe where this film was born out of, and how we got to it. In that, so obviously now in hindsight, it's like, man, they were on the ball, like doing this like right before then.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, and it feels very. Because I think there's some films where when they're tied to like historical events, they do kind of date in a weird way, because it kind of feels. But there's other ones where the message itself is timeless. I'd put The Great Dictator in there with that, which is obviously tied to World War II and it's tied to the Nazis. But somehow that message, and it's not just because we're dealing with neo-Nazis and shit now, and sadly a lot of that stuff's more relevant than what has been recently.
It was still relevant before that resurgence, shall we say?
So. We got like films like that, and I think this kind of sits in that pantheon. And I'm using words like pantheon. I'm talking about angels and shit. So it's a movie about angels, which obviously like isn't something that inherently I think appeals to me. Like as a concept, if you're like, oh, this is a movie about angels watching over a city, you say that to me, I probably assume it's going to be self-indulgent, like you said. What I think of actually something like American Gods. I think of something that thinks it's really smart.
Fair enough.
And witty. That's where my mind probably goes. And this isn't that at all. This is a very thoughtful, like I say, meditative film. This is about contemplating existence.
Yeah, surprisingly not heavy on the religious angle.
Yeah, it really isn't. It really even, like, we are calling them angels because we don't really have any other, and they use the term angel as well, but one of the great things in the movie is they kind of imply that the fact that they look like human beings and use human languages is only just because, well, humans exist, and that kind of taught them that, oh, we should communicate like those, that we do.
Yeah, typically, the angel's existence is because well, something's got to be on Earth before humans, right? Something's got to be there.
So even though they call themselves angels to a point in this movie, I'd argue that they only do that because that's what humans would call them, not because they're angels in the strict definition.
That's fair.
Of an angel that God is in charge of.
Sure, it's obviously there's references and allusions to that history, but it's very light on it.
Yeah, there's a wonderful conversation just about the history of the Earth, because they're immortal. They're talking about just, I remember when the Earth was just fish. Remember that? Remember when the land was created? Yeah. Remember all these times, and it's like, because the film is ultimately about the main character Daniel, if I'm saying that right, played by Bruno Ganz. He basically he wants to stop thinking of things in the larger scope. He wants to stop just like watching things pass by and looking at things like eras and progressions. Like the film starts with him going around the city just listening to people's thoughts, which is they can do that. They can just go around and listen to thoughts, and occasionally they'll put their hand on a shoulder, which will calm the person down and reassure them.
Only to a point though. They can't necessarily change things entirely.
No, we see that a couple of times where it doesn't work because they're just too far gone. But they definitely can comfort them.
They can, absolutely.
Especially if it's within themselves. If it's almost like it's just reminding them of the good in themselves, so they can find that and then use that.
And I think that's interesting as to the the role of the angels. You know, if they are placed here with a purpose,
Mm.
you know, do they choose just to comfort? Do they choose? Oh, okay, no, that person needs it. I will stop and do it, or is it just, you know, a calling, what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, we don't really get any information on that. You know, is it just that they've got a conscience and
Yeah, exactly. It
yeah,
could be as simple as that, but I mean,
yeah,
there's possibilities.
yeah. They all have ponytails for some reason. They all have little ponytails.
Yeah,
If you noticed that, but they all do. Which makes, I mean, the women angels, sure, I mean that's normal, but every single man angel's got this little ponytail
yeah. You know,
for
typically
reasons.
religiously, there are no women angels.
Well, religion's sexist, so fine.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, you know, often you think of angels, right? You know, angelic, and you know, often now the imagery is a woman. But in the Bible, they're all men.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just the system.
I got nothing for you. I didn't know that. Nothing for
That
you.
was an interesting little fact.
Which I think this is an interesting thing for me is that as someone who is not religious at all, this film works completely. There's not a fragment of this that doesn't work because I'm not into religion.
Yeah,
It works because it's you just take it as this is the premise of the world. These beings have existed. They're calling themselves angels, but what you want to think of them is coming from or
it's kind of up to you. Yeah, if you want to think of them in the traditional sense, you absolutely can. There's nothing to contradict that.
yeah.
But if not, it works.
So yeah, the film's about Bruno Ganz' character. Kind of, he wants to live in the moment. He wants to actually live day to day, and he wants things to matter. One of the big things that really came across to me watching it again is the idea that when you're immortal, nothing has any meaning. But life having an ending and having consequence because it ends, and because you only have a limited number of days, because you have a limited number of seconds, whatever. Everything therefore is more important. Everything has a purpose. You care. You get excited. You get scared. You get upset. You whatever. Like all these things happen because everything has meaning because life is so limited, and he wants to feel that. He's sick of just feeling like disconnected and as if nothing means anything. He wants to feel human, like a human being. And I kind of take this as just a sort of message in general for the world in the sense. This is a bit broad, but just this idea of because one of the speeches there's like a random cab driver in the middle talking about how Germany's all split up, and not just with the one wall, right? Not just that there's so many little factions, and it feels like there's all these not literal borders, but a lot of like theoretical borders between different groups of people. It's very fragmented, and everyone's kind of split up. And the line of dialogue that really stuck out to me is a line of dialogue where he says, "Everyone reads the paper as if they're a world leader, as if they're looking at the big picture, and everyone is like should be concerned with that." And it's not so much that you shouldn't be concerned with the bigger picture and ignore it. That's not what I'm getting at here. It's the idea that you don't take the joy in life anymore because you're too busy thinking of the bigger picture. You're too busy thinking of the world as numbers and as these kind of things.
It's a big screw you to philosophers.
Yeah, kind of. It's basically, hey, no. Actually, if everyone actually stopped caring about conquering and started just caring about enjoying life, how much things would that solve?
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's an argument for action beyond words and thinking. Don't just think about doing something. Don't just talk about doing stuff. It's actually going and doing it. Which again, to play into Berlin specifically, obviously there would have been a lot of talk about, okay, should we do this? Will we do this? And it was like no, and it's kind of a statement of going, no, just do it. It's the only way anything's going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then even just the idea that like the film's about him meeting this woman and kind of falling for this human woman. And that's one of the big motivators for him to become human, because he connects with her because she kind of thinks like he does.
Yeah,
and I feel like the idea of just like two people coming together, it's hard not to kind of just relate that obviously to two halves of the country coming together. Like,
this movie isn't always subtle.
No,
but it's not pretending that it's not very clearly talking about these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's really smart, but it's also just in a general sense, like don't be apart, right? Like ultimately you have to come together because the woman character Marion, she talks about how she's actually been kind of happy being alone for a long time. It's just only now she's kind of like considering the idea that maybe she doesn't want to be alone anymore. So it's just those kind of ideas. It kind of it's really consistent with its themes, and it develops them slowly over the course of the film.
Yes.
And I think it develops well over the course of the film, but it adds more layers as it goes. Because the opening thing's a poem, and it keeps coming back to these kind of repeating lines of when the child was a child, it didn't think about this. It just lived on these foods. It didn't think about it. It just acted. And it's almost this again. This idea of like stop thinking about things and going back to just living it. Just go back to being a child.
I think that's interesting from the perspective of these immortal beings. The whole of a human lifespan is kind of like, well, they're still children in comparison to them, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is like, that's the point. Humans, in this, they just do stuff. They're not the one. They're not like them looking at the bigger picture. Even the ones that think they're looking at the big picture, in comparison, aren't really. When this opens with them talking about the Earth, millennia ago.
Yeah. And even the fact that we have two angels and one wants to be human and the other one doesn't, and the one who doesn't isn't necessarily an evil guy. Like he still tries to help.
No, he's
people.
just quite content with how he is.
Yeah, but there's a wonderful shot actually towards the end when he's in the nightclub. And there's like a strobe light going off, but it's kind of changing angle, and he's standing against the wall, and you see his shadow. It's got like 5 versions where it's sort of moving up in steps.
Yeah,
and the shot stays in this for a while, and he just sort of stands there, and his shadow's just going do, and it's like he's fragmented. It's like he is not whole because he can't accept what Daniel's accepted or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like malicious between the two of them though.
No, not at all. If anything, he still kind of tries to help. After Daniel's become human, he does kind of
watch over him a bit.
Yeah. So no, like I think it's an interesting exploration of its themes. It's a very unique movie, like you say, because it has no like strict plot. It's just kind of this one character story, and that's all it really is.
Yeah, and that's the thing I said earlier. With movies without a plot can often just meander and just do stuff for the sake of it, because this is so focused on this character, and everything that happens is relevant to him. It kind of gets away with it.
Yeah, because you probably could like cut out like over half of this movie and still make the plot make sense if you really wanted to, but you'd lose a lot of the texture. You use a lot of what makes it feel like how it feels.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you there's very little in terms of plot this movie that you're watching, because this is a little over 2 hours.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, this could comfortably be an hour.
Yeah.
And in terms of plot, you would lose absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but it's a character study. Like we say, it's about kind of, because there's a whole the opening section where he's going around various people in the set, and we're just hearing their various thoughts, and we're seeing how he helps some people. Like that's a good 10-15 minutes sequence of just random different people. Obviously, actor Peter Falk comes back because he's like a recurring character in the movie, but a lot of the other characters that he bumps into aren't.
No, that's it. Yeah.
But it gives you this clear sense of just what his day is. Like, what does he go around doing? It also sets up this idea that some children can see him, which I really liked.
Yeah, that's cool. The idea that to go back to that opening, the children just do things. They accept things for what they are, so they can just see things the way they are.
Yeah. So I think I want to give a spoiler warning just so we can talk more freely about the rest of it. Although, admittedly, I don't think this is one you can really spoil that much.
No, I think there's 1 or 2 specific things.
Well, I want to talk about one of them, which is why I was put a spoiler warning.
Yeah, one or two of those that I was like, okay, no, those would definitely be spoilers. But overall, because there is no plot, there's no major twists or anything like that to ruin.
So Peter Falk plays himself, and he's Columbo. If you don't know who that is, he's the actor who plays Columbo.
Yeah.
And he's in this movie, and he's played himself. He's acting in a movie in Berlin, and the one moment in the movie that's like a total what the hell is happening right now is when he turns around and starts talking to Daniel, as if, and he's like, I can't see you, but I know you're there. I can feel you, and he's like putting out his hand for a handshake. He's describing how he should try coffee and everything else, and it's this really weird scene. You're like, wait, what? Why? Like, is Peter Falk like is he?
What? How does he know he's there? Is he cracked?
Where's this going? But when Daniel becomes human and he runs into, he doesn't just run into, he seeks him out. He goes to the movie set to find him, and he immediately comes over. He doesn't treat him like a weird extra or fan who's trying to talk to him. He's like, oh, there you are, and he comes over, and it turns out Peter Falk was just like him. He used to be an angel, and I love the idea of pitching this to the actor. Like, hey, I want you to play yourself, but you used to be an angel and you chose to be human.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is all the previous scenes in the film with him, where he's drawing the extra, because he likes to draw people. Like it's like he's appreciating the beauty of the world. It suddenly makes sense because he's kind of like damn, he kind of appreciates all the little things.
Yeah.
And he wants to draw people, visit places. He wants to do all this stuff.
And he talks about how they're not the only ones by far. Yeah, there's many of them that have made this decision over the years, and that's kind of fascinating. The idea that almost eventually they all kind of get to the same idea. They all kind of reach that same conclusion. Just different times. It just takes them different amount of time to get to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I don't know how much of this is necessarily here, but if I'm thinking about it, like, at what point is that maybe saying, like, the idea that being an angel is kind of a cold, like, unhuman kind of thing, right? And the idea that all these angels who eventually decide to become human, it's almost like, in real life, the idea of choosing to be empathetic towards other people, right? And it's like, it's part of your natural sort of growth. The idea of, like, someone who is traditionally, I don't know, not necessarily outright bigoted, but someone who is, doesn't stick up for other people's rights, doesn't support other groups of people. Is this kind of a representation of when did they kind of come to the conclusion, hey, I should kind of maybe, be a part of the world. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like,
I think I get what you're saying.
Inevitably, everyone can eventually become more human.
Yeah, no, it's the idea that everyone is inherently good, and then are corrupted, right? Through their life.
Yeah.
They don't. You don't start out as evil or an awful person.
I guess the argument against
the capacity to become this again is always there.
I guess the argument against my theory there is that we don't have an angel who's a bastard, right? Where maybe that would be what would really hit that home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's more the indifference, rather than someone who is
true.
The examples you were using. It's more people who don't care enough to get involved. Eventually, there'll be a cause that they do care enough about. It might not be the same cause as you. They might not get invested for the same reasons, but because a lot of this for Daniel is to do with the woman, right? But for Peter Falk, it could have been, the idea of acting, right? It could have been that specifically. The idea that they made the same decision to kind of come out into the world and be a part of something, but not necessarily for the same reasons.
It's interesting to decide to be an actor, though, isn't it? Like the idea that he wanted to impersonate other people. Well, that was what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to suggest why, this is very little in the movie to do with his backstory and the character, the character. So, it would be a case of, if I'm thinking about why I would do that, it would be all the people he's witnessed over the ages, and trying to kind of give that some form of immortality.
Yeah, okay.
In the way that he had.
Okay, I see it, and it resulted in Columbo. that was the enduring role.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
that's the best I got.
Yeah, no, like it's got those elements, and you're not even touching the romance itself that much. He's kind of enamored with this woman who's a circus performer, and the circus is closing down. It's the last night at the circus because they're broke.
Yeah.
And she has this love of performing, and she's worried she's going to break her neck because she's a trapeze artist, but she's got this love for the circus, and she wants to feel alive and do it, and she's passionate about it. And like I say, they're very kind of similar in the way they think, and we kind of learn that as he gets kind of close to her and listens to her, and so on and so on. And the only time she does kind of seem to be kind of at peace with herself is when he touches her at the nightclub, when he kind of like holds her hand as she's dancing, and she puts her hand down. And because he kind of falls asleep with her that night, she has this dream about him. In his angel armor, which is probably the most surreal the movie gets looking in terms of visuals, is when he's walking through the fog in the angel armor.
I do love the design.
It's really simple, but it works.
Yeah, but it stands out, right, compared to everything else.
Yeah. I really like the moment he turns into a human. because it fades to color on him, and then Cassiel, who's with him at the time, turns back and sees that he's started to leave footprints, which they don't normally leave. It's a really fun moment.
I do like how between the two of them around this point, it kind of switches a lot more between the color and the black and white.
Yeah. In fact, there's only one point in the whole film. It's right at the end where Cassiel's sitting on the stairs in black and white in a color image, because it's always just either all black and white or all color for the rest of the film. But this one shot at the end, he's sitting there in the stairs, but he alone is black and white.
Yeah, and I assume that's to kind of say they're equal in this. You know, the idea that throughout the rest of the movie, it's whoever's perspective we're with. If they're human, it's color. If they're angel, it's the black and white. I guess here at the end, when he's black and white, it's to show that no, he is just as much a part of this.
Yeah.
Whether he can be seen or not.
Yeah. I mean, if I have any critiques, honestly, is that it sometimes just gets a little too poetic at times. I thought the meeting between Marion and Daniel at the bar.
Yeah.
She rambles on poetically for about 2 minutes. It's just a bit much. It's just like, okay.
It was a little bit, yeah.
It's just once or twice it does this kind of thing where it goes on just a little bit too long with the poetry. Yeah. It's a minor complaint, but it is something that's there. That was the only times during the film where I felt like it was being a little too...
self-indulgent is probably what I'd say.
Yeah.
It's not much, but it just... there was no one there to question.
Yeah.
If that was too much.
Yeah, just a touch too much, just in those scenes. Because typically, all the slow-moving stuff where we're meeting people in the city... I like all that stuff. All that stuff's great.
Yeah, I think this example here stands out because it's a monologue.
And
there's actually very little of that in the movie for the most part. There's usually like thoughts or interrupting things. There's almost not quite a back and forth when he's out in the streets with the people because he's not interacting back necessarily. They're not hearing him, but there is a conversation-like quality in the way it's played.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Whereas this here, even though he's sat there listening to it, she is kind of just monologuing.
Yeah, no, she is. It sounds like a very unnatural speech as well for a person to say, I guess. Like, it made sense when it was in their head because they were just kind of like thinking to themselves, where she says all this out loud, so it feels just a bit more like...
It's different, yeah.
Off in comparison to everything else. But yeah, so... And I kind of like that Falk kind of... Like, she is a human, kind of becomes his own angel, but I like that Falk kind of becomes the human guardian angel, because he kind of, like, encourages both of them. Because he meets her at one point at the hot dog stand, or whatever it was. And he actually has a scene where he tries to do the same, like, I know you're there, and talks, and it's Cassiel who's there. And Cassiel does not shake his hand, like Daniel did.
He's not interested.
Daniel took his hand. But Cassiel did not. And maybe one day he will. This is not necessarily saying he never will.
No, it's just saying now he doesn't feel like that's for him.
Yeah. All the angels congregate at the library as well. That was something noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice place of quiet, right?
Yeah. But they seemed quite content on like helping everyone who was studying. It was almost like it was promoting the idea of knowledge. Like, be knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And it's something they appreciate, because I mean they've basically just been doing nothing but collecting knowledge and cataloguing it for billions of years.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's a little frustrating to them that they can't just share that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, this idea that, like, we sort of alluded to this earlier, talking about how they look human because humans exist. They speak human languages because we can communicate like they do. Before we didn't really have, we just kind of did. It was just a telepathic kind of understanding, essentially, I assume. And I think it's interesting, the idea that until intelligent life like human beings existed, there was nothing to tempt them to be anything else. They didn't look at fish and go, "Oh, I fancy being a fish." Those fish know what's going on.
No, that's fair.
Like the idea that getting to humanity, like humanity was the first thing that kind of... And I don't know if that's necessarily the idea of, like, I don't know, like eventually life will reach a point where it hits something that's worth living. Not that unintelligent animals aren't worth living. I don't mean that.
See, taking it in this direction, sounds very egotistical as a species.
As a species, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's just interesting to me that, like, if they've been alive forever, if they have been eternal and they've been around forever, how long was that before humans even existed? I mean, humanity's existence must be a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the clock metaphor, right?
Mm.
Where if the Earth, I think it's if the universe is the entire clock, 24 hours. The Earth has existed for like the last hour or so, and humans are like the last minute or something stupid like that. Comparatively, it's like that.
Even that sounds a bit.
Yeah,
much.
there is the math of it has been done. It's there. I'm just misremembering, but the idea of no, it's really a minuscule percentage.
Yeah. So no, it's interesting that this is the first time and maybe it is like us saying, "Oh, humans are special," but I don't think that's the point of the film. I think I'm reading into it from that angle just because I think it's interesting to think about. I think the point of the film is everything else we've talked about. I think it's talking about people coming together. It's talking about being more humane. It's talking about actual real life things. I mean, those are the broad general things that apply to everything that we just mentioned, and then you've got the specific the Berlin Wall, because the movie that's being made as well is about Nazis. And again, there's people, the old man who Cassiel's hangs around with for a bit early on in the film. He's talking about he remembers before the Second World War, there used to be a whole couple of streets here. There was shops, there was apartment buildings, and it's all gone now because of during the war there was fighting and bombs and whatever.
Yeah. I almost wish you could get a movie of these angels, like in this mythology, right? In wartime. Like, this here, if they're going around just comforting people on the streets over really quite small matters for the most part. What would it be like during, a time where everyone is significantly more distressed than just everyday life? Obviously this never makes light of everyday life. The idea that to all these people, everything matters.
Yeah, it's important. All of it's important.
Yeah, it's important to them, and that's the idea of, okay, they're not seeing the bigger picture because they're worried about themselves or whatever it is they're concerned about, and it matters to them more than anyone else. But I mean, imagine if that was heightened through in wartime. That'd be fascinating to see.
I think the reason why we're not is because the point of the movie's
it'd be a different movie, obviously.
But also just the idea that we're using war's backstory to kind of show, again, the worst of humanity. And again, maybe that's like when humanity is almost solely focused on the bigger picture. When it's wartime, that's what everyone's thinking about. Like, individual needs kind of get shafted during wartime.
They do, yeah.
And I think that's kind of what it's getting at with and again, going back to the idea that we don't shy away from that. There's someone who commits suicide that Cassiel tries to stop, and it doesn't work. He still jumps.
Not enough, yeah.
This man's revisiting this which is now just like a flat land, but it used to be where he lived with all these shops and people and everything. And it's like the worst of the worst. The movie's about Nazis, and we're talking about that. Like the worst of the worst of the worst, but there's still things to live for. There's still things to hope for.
Yeah.
It's kind of, so there's this optimism to it, which is
really
absolutely
nice. I get all of that, and this again, it's a different movie that I'm here. It's almost like I want to see more of this world, this mythology of in the water. You said it there. All the personal needs kind of get shafted.
I can see the teaser trailer now.
How do they try and comfort? What do they do?
I can see the teaser trailer now. Wings of Desire 2. This time it's war.
See, you just made light. I was being serious.
I know, but you made me think of Aliens, so I thought I'll crack the joke. This was actually remade, by the way, this movie.
Yeah, I know. I've never seen it.
City of Angels. No, nor have I. I don't really have any interest because I like this one, so I don't see the need. I assume it's not as art
existential.
House. Yeah, as existential. There you go. To use a better word.
I was always under the impression that was more of a straight up romance. Yeah,
yeah, that's what I thought it was as well. I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was always one that I never watched because it didn't necessarily appeal to me based on what it was.
Yeah,
I was familiar with it, but
it's Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage from 1998.
Exactly, not exactly a must watch on my
It's
list.
it's hard to expect this to be anything other. Oh, jeez, Holt's
What?
in this.
What?
Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, really?
He's like the third cast member listed.
Oh, that's cool.
Long before I'd heard of him. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, he was doing things. What's this listed of? It does say drama first. It's drama, fantasy, romance is what it's listed as in IMDb. I mean, they're alphabetical.
Yeah, I was going to say they're alphabetical on IMDb.
Still.
But I mean, maybe one day I'll watch it.
But I probably won't. I'm good.
Well, no, I might not as a necessary to see what a remake of this film is, just as its own thing entirely. Maybe, because this doesn't need a remake.
Unless I hear that Nicolas Cage is in Mandy form in this movie, in which case I'll watch it to see how insane it is.
That's a point. I still need to finish watching that.
You heathen. Mandy's fantastic. I'll not say these words. Mandy's fantastic.
Yeah.
Poor taste on your part, quite frankly.
I stopped. I got about 50 minutes in and stopped watching because we had to record. That was about 4 or 5 days ago, and I forgot I hadn't finished it until you just mentioned it.
Had he even assembled his act yet?
No.
Get to the good stuff. So, yeah, but I mean, we got a little off track there, but Wings of Desire is fantastic. Is basically
It is,
the thing. It's a great visual movie. It's a great sort of study. It's kind of philosophical, but I'd say it's maybe more, like you say, existential.
Yes.
But it's probably the most optimistic existential film I've seen.
Yeah, we've covered a fair few on this show.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a handful over the few years. This is easily the most upbeat.
Yeah, they're all depressing as hell, the other ones.
Yeah, they are.
Go back and watch a review of Women in the Dunes and just see us slowly hate life over the course of that discussion as we realise what it's about.
It is, because I think what's interesting is a lot of existential films start in a place that's kind of okay and descends and goes, look how shit this can be, right, by the end. Whereas this one starts in a very depressing state. It's like everything's kind of shit. There's people like really unhappy, and it's like what's the point? These black. It's everything's black and white. We're not experiencing anything. What's the point in any of this? But by the end, it's like, well, no.
Because I think existential films, at least typically, I would say, they want to scare you and shock you into action because you realise, okay, if we don't actually keep an eye on things, this is what it can become. This film, on the other hand, is about saying, no,
inspire you into action.
It's inspiring, which to be fair is a lofty thing to try and achieve, and I think for the most part it does.
It pulls it off, yeah.
So, Wings of Desire is very good. Now, of course, Wim Wenders does have another film that I love a lot, even more so, in fact, which we will get to at some point. I promise you this. But for now, we have discussed Wings of Desire. So I will ask you what you will give it out of 10.
I will give it 9.
I will also give it 9. I don't know why you said it like that.
I don't know either. It just kind of happened.
Oh dear. Oh, just one fail part actually. I liked it when he goes to find Marion towards the end, and she's already left, but the circle of dirt from the circus is just there, and he just sits there on his own. It's like he has to feel the disappointment as well. He can't just have all the happy feelings.
Yeah. There are some other really like interesting moments. When he first becomes human, he's wandering around. He's got the blood, and he runs into this guy. He's like, well, tell me all these colors. And the guy's like, he goes, I need to try coffee. I need to go get a cup of coffee. And the guy's like, do you have any money? And he's like, no. And the guy's like, well, here you go. It's like, people looking out for each other.
Yeah, people can be nice. Who'd have thought it? So that's Wings of Desire. By all means, let us know what you think of the film in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that jazz. All of that supports us, as does going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month. Obviously, the $5 tiers when you get to vote every month. I think this isn't going up for another week, so the vote right now will be done by the time this goes up. But for the sake of telling you, there is one. There is a vote right now.
Yeah, there'll be a new one soon.
There'll be a new one soon that you can also participate in. So you can check out Patreon. We actually do have a merch store now as well, bizarrely enough. Due to popular demand, we set up merch stores both for the UK and the US. You can buy shirts and hoodies and some various other random items with logos on them.
Very random items.
Yes. Hey, people are asking for the dog bandana. I'm going to cave.
No one is asking for the dog bandana except Matt.
I'm going to cave. Put the dog bandana on it. So you can do that, which will also support us. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys, and we will see you next time.